the onboarding was laid out in a way that got people excited to be a part of this and made them feel 100% clear on what they had to do by the end of it. I know that there's enough companies out there where you speak to reps who've been onboarded there and they've been basically sent logins to the CRM and just wish the best of luck.
Yep.
And if conviction is everything in sales, how am I now suddenly going to magic conviction and excitement to be a part of this and really sell the shit out of this product if nobody's giving a shit about selling the product to me?
Welcome to Behind the Sale. I'm your host, Princess B. On this show, we talk about sales and leadership in the high-ticket space. My goal is to help you level up your skills as a leader so you can close more deals and transform more lives. Today, we have Adam Taylor on the show. He is a former closer turned sales manager, and now he runs multiple high-performing sales teams and casually helps businesses scale to $1 million a month in revenue. We discuss how to scale a business to $1 million a month, how to manage not just the sales team, but the business owner as well, and what to look for when hiring A players for your team. If you want to learn what it takes to be an exceptional sales manager who drives significant impact and growth, then stay tuned. Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Really excited for this.
Honestly, like when I saw that you took a business from 200K a month to $1 million, I was like, okay, I want to know, like, I'm just so curious what goes behind that. But before we dive into that, I'm curious about like, how did you know that sales management was the next step for you?
I didn't.
What do you
Actually,
mean?
I didn't. It's kind of came to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so it's a funny pattern that I've kind of seen throughout my life is that most of the opportunities and the crossroads in life where you're suddenly faced with a decision where you either go left or you go right have always been almost made for me. They were very, very apparent at the time. And so my first sales management job actually came to me. The offer came to me. I was approached to take on the job. And I knew that I wanted to do that because of a few reasons. Number one, as a closer setter in the sales space, I was kind of reaching that point, which I know a lot of people are feeling at the moment of, I would like to do something else. I would like to be able to leverage my time and my skill set more than just on individual calls with prospects. And so I was feeling that, and I did want that. And I do believe a lot in manifestation, law of attraction, etc. And I think that when you're ready, these things come to you. I do believe very, very deeply in that. So I was able to leverage skills of management and leadership from past businesses. I'd managed a chain of gyms in the past. I'd had my own CrossFit gyms in Germany. And so I'd already built teams, managed teams, led teams. I played professional rugby for 9 years, was most often captain or vice captain of those teams that I played for. And so I was able to leverage those skills then and couple them with the new skills of selling that I had acquired and learned post-COVID and just really kind of meet those in the middle and coaching sales as well. You know, I was very, very fortunate enough to be able to be part of the objection box in the early stages of that. And so I was, exposed to probably some of the highest level of coaching on the market at the moment, and being around some incredible people and being able to learn from people like Bill, etc. I was able to take all of those skills from the sales world, all of the skills I had from my past lives, and just kind of meet them in the middle. And I guess luck is when hard work and opportunity meets, isn't it? And I got
Yes.
lucky.
So you were not even considering, you weren't planning on making that shift at all, it sounds like,
No,
right?
not one
Okay.
bit. Not one bit. No, it was a role that I was, going to naturally sort of evolve and grow into the objection box. Obviously, if I proved myself and I did the work and all that kind of stuff, but this just kind of shortened my timelines. And so the decision almost made itself a little bit for me, Very tough
Okay.
decision, but it was really what I wanted to do at the time.
Okay, that makes me feel better about like being in the situation that I'm in where it's like I'm kind of falling into like a team lead role, and then I think manager could kind of sort of be in the cards in the future, but I feel like in order for that to happen, I have to like get after it. Otherwise, someone else will just scoop in and do it.
Oh yeah,
So I think there's a balance of like just trusting the natural order of things, but also you have to kind of get after it, at least from where I'm in my situation.
100%. As much as I believe in manifestation, law of attraction, it doesn't happen lying on your bed staring at the ceiling. You have to be in the
Yeah.
arena, you have to be working, you have to be testing yourself, you have to be failing, you have to be in the arena. But I do genuinely believe that when you are ready, these things, you will attract these things naturally. They will start gravitating themselves towards you, or you will start gravitating towards them. Because otherwise, there's no room if there's no more room for growth in what you're doing, opportunities and things will start getting in, they'll start entering into your field of vision that you just wouldn't have seen if you were still growing in this bubble here. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So if I'm working really hard on just being a closer and being the best closer I can, and refining my sales skills, and increasing my close rates, increasing my show rates, increasing my production, then everything that I see in my reticular activation system, in my sort of field of vision, everything I see will be in congruency with improving that skill.
Okay, yeah.
Just the same as because that's what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for red things in the room, I find red things. I don't see anything that's brown because I'm not looking for them. But once I get to a place where I'm like, I feel competent and confident with this, I wonder what else is next. And you sort of lift your head, you'll start seeing new opportunities that you otherwise would have maybe passed on, or not even seen, or not even met that person, not even had that conversation, because that's just not what you're focusing on. And so I do believe that once you are ready, and once you are that person capable of doing the job, that it will find you.
Okay,
I do.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's clicking. Now it makes sense because in the last few months I've really focused on like working on my leadership, not just my closing skills, but now my leadership. And all of a sudden, like the business owner is coming to me like, "Hey, what are your thoughts on this? Hey, we have a new closer coming in. Can you train them?" And I'm like, "I did not ask for this, but okay." Like,
Right. But you were
yeah,
working on your leadership skills, and therefore all of a sudden you're starting to attract leadership opportunities, leadership situations.
yeah.
I'm very, very, I've seen it too many times for it to be a coincidence now. You
Mm.
have to be the person before you become the person. You
Yeah.
have to be a leader before you're asked to become a leader.
I like that a lot. You have to be the person before you can become the person, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no other way around it.
Sweet. I'm so curious on the actual like nitty-gritty of things. How like what are the top three changes that you made within the company that you took from 200K a month to 1 million?
Yeah, so it was two to 300K so in revenue, to just under 1 million a month in revenue in 5 months. And so the main things were really that the offer was able to scale. That's the first thing. I can't magic leads out of thin air in the sales department. So that's the first prerequisite. But given that that was possible and that was ready to happen, the first thing was taking the onboarding and ramp up process that the company had and just turning it into something that was able to onboard and ramp up reps very effectively and very quickly. So that was the first thing, really choreographing everything that happens from that last hiring interview conversation to them becoming a fully fledged member of the team, setting expectations, following through on those expectations, and then having a onboarding process that was mapped out. I played around with different time lengths. We started with 2 days, then we moved up to 4 days, and everything was laid out super clear that on day one, this is what's expected of you. Day two, this is what's expected of you. Day three, I even put in time, like this part is going to take you 90 to 120 minutes. This part is going to take you 30 to 45 minutes. And so that people can actually sit down, plan this out, and everything's super clear as what is expected of them. The second thing I did within that, so this is still point number one,
Okay.
was the onboarding and ramping system. But the second thing I did within that was made it so that everything was self-reporting. And so after each section of the onboarding, there was an accountability task that they had to come and almost like an exercise. They had to drop in their own answer into Slack, into a Slack channel. that was just for the onboarding. And so I could keep tabs on seeing where this person is in the process, what they're thinking, how they're feeling, how they're picking up what I'm putting down. And it was also laid out in a way, and this probably be the third thing, the onboarding was laid out in a way that got people excited to be a part of this and made them feel 100% clear on what they had to do by the end of it.
Mm.
I know that there's enough companies out there where you speak to reps who've been onboarded there and they've been basically sent logins to the CRM and just wish the best of luck.
Yep.
And if conviction is everything in sales, how am I now suddenly going to magic conviction and excitement to be a part of this and really sell the shit out of this product if nobody's giving a shit about selling the product to me? And so the very first thing in the onboarding, the very first section was vision, mission, values. It wasn't product, it wasn't program, it wasn't price points, it wasn't payment plans, it wasn't CRMs. The very first thing was vision, mission, values. Why the hell does this company exist? What are we actually doing here? What are you a part of? And what are the behaviors, values, the behaviors and principles upon which we want you to act? The very second thing was the avatar.
Mm.
Who are we selling to? In the problem, the person, the problem, and the process, we go person first. These kind of people, these psychographics, this typical problem in their daily life, these typical objections and skepticisms on the call, these kind of goals and aspirations that they have, but these kind of fears that hold them back. Everything about the person to be able to get into the mindset of the person that we're going to be selling first, so we can actually go and help them, which thereby achieving the vision and the mission of the company. And so everything was laid out in a way that the rep is like, shit, this is cool. Like, this makes sense. I want to be a part of this. This is solid. Also, setting very clear expectations of this is what's expected of you. So to just establish that relationship of when you say you're going to do this, do it. And when I say I'm going to do this, I'll do it. Once we've established that baseline, everything else falls into place very, very easily. So that was the first thing, was really resystemizing the onboarding and ramping process.
Mm.
That way we were able to add reps quickly and get them up to KPI very, very quickly. And so that added the first, 200 to 300 just within the first sort of 4 to 5 weeks, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Just people coming in, knocking it out of the park, closing deals, and increasing revenue. That was, pure, plain and simple. Then from there, there came a point of optimization of the sales process. This was probably to be number 2.
Okay.
Would be, okay, now we've got more people in the door. How can we now increase production with the manpower that we have? So there's obviously 2 ways of going about increasing that now. I can either I can add another person that's closing at 20%, or I can get everybody on the team to close at 30%. Yeah. That's going to be less complexity, less overhead, less people to manage, and ultimately more profitable, because a 30% close rate is going to mean a higher ROAS for the company. Mm-hmm. And so from there, it was a process of what I like to call reverse engineering the sales process. Looking at, this is the thing that is stopping people from moving forward the most. So what do we put within the sales process to counteract that? Mm-hmm. The very first one, and there were multiple different ones that we did, but the very first one was the most common objection the guys were getting: this sounds too good to be true. And so there's 2 ways you can go about this now, right? As a sales rep, as a sales manager, as a human being, really. You can sit there and be very frustrated at people and say, oh my God, what do you mean it's so too good to be true? Like, dude, like, just do it. Oh, they keep saying it's too good to be true. It's so annoying. Or we can say, okay, well, how do we help them understand that it's not too good to be true? Therefore, removing that objection altogether. And so at the top of the presentation, we introduced what Alex Hormozi calls damning admissions. So we started presenting by telling them all of the downside. We told them how hard it was going to be, how they weren't going to see results. It was going to take longer than they thought it would be. They'd be putting time, money, and energy into something they're not seeing a result. They're going to be the overweight person in the gym, wondering why they don't have a 6-pack after 2 weeks and wanting to quit. This is all going to happen. But on the other side of that, and then giving them the back the upside. Mm. Therefore, this sounds too good to be true. Never heard of it again. Never.
That's genius. I've heard Alex Hormozi talk about it too. I don't know why I'm resistant to doing that. I want to start doing that because one of my accounts that I sell, I get that a lot because it's a really good offer. But yeah, it's a hard one. So I would usually put it on the person. Like, do you feel like your goals are too good to be true? But because this is like a done for you, I feel like it doesn't land.
No,
So yeah.
no, done for you. Totally different ball game.
Yeah.
So what's happening there? So firstly, the resistance is because it feels counterintuitive.
Hmm.
There's this fear that if I tell them the downside, that's all they're going to think of, and they're going to say, "Well, I'm not going to do it then if that's all true." There's obviously a way you have to do it. You give them as much downside as you can, and this is the counterintuitive part. The more you give them, the more they believe every single word that you say afterwards, which is why we put this at the top of the presentation. So placement, sequence is important here. If this is the very last thing you tell them before you ask for the purchase, it's probably not going to work as well as if you put it at the top of the presentation and then run them through this amazing offer. Because now everything that you say is not too good to be true. It's like, I believe Princess now because what salesperson in their right mind would tell me all of these bad things that are going to happen? She must be telling me the truth. Therefore, if this is true, this must be true. Am I willing to live with this downside for this potential upside? If I've done a good job in discovery, I'm going way off screen now, then yes, I will be.
Hmm.
All that's happening in the prospect's mind is they're looking for the danger. Our limbic system is wired to help us survive, not to thrive.
Hmm.
And so it's looking for the danger at every little turn. They're already fearful of getting on Zoom with us, with a stranger that they've never met before. They don't use Zoom very often. We use it all the time. It's supernatural for us. For them, it's very scary. The screen's black, and then all of a sudden a face appears. Oh my God, it was this person. What are they going to be like? Are they going to be nice? Are they going to be horrible to me? Am I going to hate this? I'm going to lose money. Am I going to be pressured into something? So all they're doing is they're looking for the danger. And if their brain isn't satisfied that there is no, or that they understand where the danger is, it will keep looking until it finds it. And that's where the too good to be true objection comes from. So you have to drag the boogeyman from under the bed and say, this is the boogeyman. That's how bad it is. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Let's look at the bed. That's what you're doing essentially. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. If you let me, we will talk for an hour about objections. So let's get back to the top three things that you shifted. So one was the onboarding process. The second thing, what would you title that bullet point? The second one?
Reverse engineering the sales process or
Okay.
increasing production. And
Okay.
so that was one thing was reverse engineering the sales process to help the guys close more. And the second thing was looking at gaps in the system. And so nobody was doing follow-ups. Everybody was reliant on one call closes. Yeah, I know. So it was, buy or die. Everybody, like, if they don't close on the first call, I'll maybe send a message in a couple of weeks, but maybe. And so shifting beliefs and behaviors around follow-up, tracking how many deals are we getting from one call closes versus follow-ups, looking to increase that number, and just increase overall production. That was the second thing that we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The third?
So the third from there was then having a constant recruiting pipeline. So once you get to the team to about 8 to 10 members, there is natural churn in terms of people underperforming. And every now and then, somebody, a top performer is just going to leave. It happened to me 3 times, or all three they just moved on to other things. They didn't move on to another offer. They moved on to something outside of sales. One went into real estate, one went into coaching. And so it's going to happen. What happens is if you stop recruiting and you have 8 guys on your team, one guy leaves of his own accord, one guy's underperforming, all of a sudden, cash and revenue drop next month. If you don't have a pipeline of people to bring in when needed, you're now having to start that cycle when you already need to be bringing someone on. And so that cycle could take 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the quality of people that you speak to. You could find the person in a day. It could take 2 weeks. And that's 2 weeks that's gone with no increase in production. So first, it was just hiring hiring the right guys and systemizing that process. Second was increasing production of what we had. And then the third was mitigating risk of the team dropping in terms of just pure numbers by having a constant recruiting pipeline to be able to call upon. And so I was constantly, reaching out to people in my network, having group interviews, tapping into recruiters, just to be meeting people, greeting people. Sometimes I would say we're not ready to move on this until in 2 weeks, and then even then it's only a maybe. But once you get good at that hiring process, if you find the right person, it's just a sales conversation as well for them to be excited to join the team. And so, sometimes in 2 weeks, you're like, hey, we're ready to go. And they're like, cool. Sometimes they say, I found something else. Okay, that's a shame, but I've already got these other 3 people that I can tap into because I've already established that relationship and that I've had that conversation. So I'm ready to move, and the team will never drop, and I can just keep increasing or at least maintaining at that level.
I have a question about hiring. What are the top 2 qualities that you look for to determine if someone is good? Adam, if you tell me intuition, don't tell me intuition.
No, it's not intuition. No, self-responsibility. The first thing I'm looking for. And you'll notice it in people's language patterns as to where they attribute their successes and their failures, whether they attribute them to external factors and to internal factors. Somebody that has a very internal conversation with me all the way through the hiring process, I'm like, I like this person, because they're just going to take responsibility for every single thing that happens to them, good or bad. Without that,
good. Yeah.
thank you. I've boiled that down to like the overarching principle under which everything else falls. Self-responsibility. If you don't have that, everything that happens outside of your sphere of control will automatically become the scapegoat for your failure or success. The leads, the marketing, the calls, my energy, my whatever, I don't know, like everything else's fault, good or bad. If somebody takes responsibility for it, they're ultimately in control of it, and they can make sure that they're operating at their best, the highest level, or not, and they can then go away and fix it. But it's never going to be anybody else's fault. So that'd be the first thing. If I had to choose a second one, I would look at they have to be sort of congruent with the values of the company. So this is where it might get a little bit individual, where somebody could be completely self-responsible, but they're very sort of, fun, cheeky, charismatic kind of person. And we're selling a 65K done for you e-com service. There might be a conflict of values there, not just values, but sort of personality traits, almost branding, right? The marketing message may not be congruent with that person. The same way that, maybe, a mid-40s corporate kind of guy is going to maybe struggle on a YouTube automation or a UGC offer where the target market is just 20 to 25, 18 to 25 years of age.
Yeah.
So that would be the second thing. That's a little bit of an obvious one, but I think it's an easily overlooked one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We'll jump straight for sales skill. So at sales skill, I don't even care, to be honest, at the beginning. At the beginning, okay. I'll check that box later. First, I want to know, do you take responsibility for yourself? Yes or no? And are your values and sort of personality traits in line with the company's? If so, then we'll move on to the next part.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. And on the other side of it, closers should always ask, like, the question I always ask is, what kind of person would not be a good culture fit for this company? Because I've done that before and they described me and I was like, oh. And that's ever since then, I always ask that question because yeah, you don't want to find out after the fact when you're onboarded that, oh, yikes, like I don't fit in.
No, that's a very good question. I like that. But I do know that a lot of people will hire people out of need because they don't have that constant recruiting pipeline that I was talking about before. And so now my top guys left. It's been 2 weeks. Numbers are down. I just need somebody who's willing to join the offer. That's just the worst. It's a terrible place to be in. It's just going to be a spiral of death from there because they're going to come on. They're not going to be culture fit. They're not going to like it. They're going to breathe bad vibes into the whole team. Then somebody else is not going to want to stay there anymore. They're going to lose conviction. It's a real predicament, real predicament. And so choice negates luck in that sense.
And then another piece of being a good sales manager is like really understanding the relationship between the business owner and the sales manager. So Can you explain a little bit, like, what are the key things, distinctions we should know if someone's looking to become a sales manager about that relationship with the business owner? Because sometimes, like, I've been on teams where it's like, are you guys even on the same planet? Like, there's so much, like, they don't agree on things, and it's really weird.
This is such a favorite topic. So I currently coach a couple of guys one-on-one to get into sales management, and obviously, a couple of them already are in positions now. And so I didn't realize that this was such a big skill that I would need to teach them, that I was forced to learn, is to how to manage up. You think that you're going to come into sales management and only have to manage down. Of course, you're not, above anybody, right? But you think you're going to have to manage the team in quotation marks below you, but you have to manage up to the business owner. And there's a very particular language that you need to speak to them to be able to do that. So before working them, of course, you should have, the same goals. You should see the same things and sort of want to go think about things pretty much the same way. You may not be in 100% alignment, but you need to be walking in the same direction. That's the first thing. You can't be wanting to scale the team, and this person is wanting you to come in just to keep it at the same. Like that's obvious, right?
Mm-hmm.
But from there, once you're actually on the job, you learn very quickly that everything is a sales conversation. And this is where things like Chris Voss and Never Split the Difference, who says everything is a negotiation, it really becomes apparent. Everything. And there's a particular way to go about it. There's a few words that you have to completely eliminate from your vocabulary right off the bat. That's I think, I feel, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
If you start any sentence with those three things to a business owner, they won't listen. They just won't listen. And it's not their fault, it's yours. You just spoke French to them and they speak English.
Okay.
And so I know that this is a frustration of a lot of people that get into sales management or leadership positions, and but they're not listening to me, and they're constantly bombarding me with things that I should be doing and this, that, and the other. And I want to do it this way, but they won't listen to what I'm saying. Yeah. And this goes back to self-responsibility, right? Is it the business owner's fault? No, they're just being the business owner. They're acting in what they believe is the best interest of the business, of you, of the team, of their customers, of everybody. They're not being a bad person. They have the best intentions. If you're not able to convey your idea and why you believe that it is a superior method or strategy or way of going about things that is going to yield a greater result ultimately for the company, that is not the fault of the business owner for not understanding it. It's your fault for not conveying it. And so the best way to go about it that I've seen so far is to go about everything like a science experiment and to propose a hypothesis. And so you'll start with, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? That has to be clearly defined. What problem am I trying to solve? And it should end up in increasing cash collected, increasing show rate, increasing close rate, or ultimately increasing bottom line of the company. That is the problem you should be solving. The second thing is, how am I going to solve it? So this is the hypothesis. We're going to do this, this, and this. And if you want to absolutely hammer this home, you need to be able to show who you are modeling in the market that is in a position or has the results that you're looking to get. So we're going to do this because I've spoken to these 7 people, and of those, these 3 guys are all doing the same thing. And so we're going to model them, and we're going to test this for, and this is the next one, X amounts of time or calls. So we're going to do this for the next 2 weeks, or the next 100 booked calls, or the next 100 taken calls, or the next 50 taken calls, whatever the sample size is, and we expect this result. If you're able to lay that out clearly and show that you spent all of 15 minutes putting this into a Google Docs for someone, how can that business owner say no? And if they do say no, fucking listen to them, because they've probably seen something you're not. If you still feel that this is the best way, now you need to use your sales acumen that you should have and negotiation skills to empathize, acknowledge, and tie back in what you're doing, how what you're doing is going to get this business owner the result that they ultimately want. That's it.
Okay. So put simply, go into the conversation with confidence and conviction. No, I think, I believe. Get really clear on the problem that you want to solve and what you need to get that problem solved. and essentially pitch them on it.
Yeah, literally.
With
And you put
conviction.
out like a scientific hypothesis. I
Okay.
hypothesize that to solve this problem, we're going to do these things, which model these people for this amount of time. And after this amount of time, we expect this result. That's the hypothesis. After this amount of time, we will see, did we succeed, exceed, or fail? And then we'll look at why that was. And the last thing would be that you can only change one variable. So the how we're going to solve it needs to be one change, one variable. If you change three things at the same time, you won't know what worked. And so all you're doing is presenting that to the business owner as this is the hypothesis, this is what I expect to happen. And after that time frame, we'll test results and see if that's the case.
That's really good to know because I do have some things that I think would help the team out that I want to propose. So I'm going to follow that model to make sure it's executed properly because that's what's been holding me back from approaching them with that conversation is not knowing how to do it the right way. So thanks.
Very well. You take that and run with it. Yeah.
Hell
Or
yeah.
there's puts you in a position of I've actually thought about this, I've put the work in, but I'm not saying this is the absolute truth and this is definitely going to work. I'm saying this is what I expect to happen, and we will test results and either repeat the process. We'll reiterate, or we'll scrap it all together and we'll try again. It's just a process of experimentation at that point.
A burning question that I have is why do companies, sales managers give newer closers like the quote unquote bad leads when they're ramping up? Because the point I'm guessing is just like see how good of a closer they are, but how can you do that when they have like leads who are living in their car?
Yeah. I mean, I believe, I don't know because I'm not them, but I believe that what's happening in that situation is that they are looking at, okay, their highest likelihood of the leads that have the highest likelihood of closing, I'm going to give to the person who has the highest likelihood of closing them to maximize my opportunity on the return on ad spend that I can get from this lead.
Mm-hmm.
If this lead is less likely to close, of course, it would make kind of mathematical sense to give it to the person who has the highest likelihood of closing them. But if they're already full with these top tier leads, then the next best thing is to give them to the person who has, a lower likelihood of closing them. Because if I was already setting myself up to not very likely get a sale from this person, then I don't lose as much, but I have everything to gain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just a basic mathematical equation of probabilities and likelihoods of if this lead is likely to close, give it to the guy who's likely to close them. If this guy is not likely to close, it doesn't really matter if I give it to the guy who's not likely to close them. But that person can at least test their mettle. They can test a skill set. They can quote unquote burn the lead. They can at least have a run at it. I mean, I've had guys. I've tested out ramp up periods where guys do outbound to close their first deal before getting inbound. And I've had guys who will just set people that are absolutely not financially qualified just to have a test run of the framework, of the presentation that's not a role play. And then just a test run at some objection handling. All with the expectation, knowing full well that it's not going to close, but at least I get an at bat with a lead that's already been paid for, that's just kind of sitting there in the CRM anyway. Depends on what kind of person you are.
That makes sense. So for you as a manager, do you not do that
Do I not
practice
do what?
do like give like the quote unquote bad leads to newer closers?
Once people are on inbound, it'll be, I prefer a round robin system. It's
Okay.
just a little bit less complexity for
Mm-hmm.
me. Now, there are some softwares that have conditional routing where this combination of answers from the application question will go to this calendar. And so those are things that can be simpler to implement. I just prefer a round robin system because I want to see clear data on almost fair data spread across the team. So of course, if this person is getting the quote unquote, highest likelihood of closing leads, and we have to be careful with the good leads, bad leads, but the higher likelihood of closing leads, then of course the stats are going to be slightly higher than the guy who's not. And so it's going to be very hard for him to compete with those numbers, and he's going to look bad when actually there's other factors in play. So I prefer a round robin so that once somebody does get on inbound, it's a fair test. And I like to give people 10 calls taken, look at the results. If we're looking good, we'll extend to 20 calls taken. After 20 calls taken, if we're at KPI or look, there or thereabouts, then we're a full-time member of the team. And if not, we'll part ways at 10 calls taken or at 20.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair KPI for sure. Okay. And I'm not, just like disclaimer, I'm not necessarily against doing the whole like top tier, bottom tier leads thing, because I've closed plenty of bad leads. So it's always good to practice pitching when you're not solid on the pitch with someone who's less likely. So I get it. I think I would do the same thing, to be honest, as a manager. So, okay. So I want to roll into the rapid fire question segment. Okay. So answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
So, true or false? Someone has to be a good closer to be a good sales manager.
We have to define good.
Okay. How do you even define good? Because some people, close rate, that's like, what's the standard for good? Like 25%?
Depends on the offer, depends on the person.
Yeah, because that's not my standard, but I know it is
I'll
for a
try, I'll
lot
try
of.
not I'll try not to skew the game too much. So
Yeah.
I like to define terms, because when we say good could mean
Yeah.
one thing to you, could mean one thing to me. I'm going to say false. I don't think you have to be always top of the leaderboard to be a good sales manager, because there are other factors in play. I think you have to understand sales very, very well and understand psychology. I don't think you have to be quote unquote always top of the leaderboard. I think you need to be there or thereabouts. You can't always be bottom, because you don't understand sales if you're bottom of the
Yeah.
leaderboard. But I'm going to say false.
Okay. What are two questions someone should ask themselves if they're not sure yet if they want to manage teams?
Why do I want to manage teams would be the first one. Am I okay with being responsible not just for myself anymore, but for multiple people, and sitting in the middle? Because there will be days where you feel like you're getting shit from below and shit from above. Am I okay with that? The main question is why, though. If you can really deeply understand why, it'll become apparent whether you should do it or not.
What is an unpopular opinion you have about sales management?
Unpopular opinion. First thing that comes to mind is it's simple, just not easy. Like, people overcomplicate it. It's very simple. It's just not easy. Just be a good person, be there for your people, have a minimum sort of analytical brain that can see and solve problems, and just don't be a pussy about it.
Solid.
That's it. Just, it's simple. It's just not easy.
What's your mission?
My mission, personally, I feel like the everything that I look back on through the trajectory of my life has come down to self-actualization and self-transcendence. This is just a realization, sort of, looking retroactively, of I like to acquire a skill, get, pretty decent, competent at something, and then teach that to the next person. It happens naturally. It keeps happening to me. These things keep popping up for me. And I believe that is my purpose, is to acquire skills, give it on to the next person, acquire a skill, give it on to the next person. That's what I love it. That's my sense. That's where I get a true sense of fulfillment. And the very few times that I go into flow state is when I'm doing just that.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
What's a question that when you go on podcasts that you really want someone to ask you?
Ooh, what a question. Maybe that one. I do enjoy talking about my backstory a little bit, because I know that when you produce sort of content and you're kind of putting out your message, it's very difficult to get the whole context of a person in short form. And so I think in these long form pieces of content, I always enjoy hearing the whole backstory and context about how somebody got to where they were, and like where they were brought up, and the things that they did before they became who they are now. I always enjoy understanding that, because it gives me context around the person. And so, if anybody were to be interested, I do genuinely enjoy talking about how I grew up in Spain and moved to France, play rugby, played professionally for 9 years, CrossFit, gyms, COVID, nomad, all these kind of things. So I think it gives a little bit more context and color to the short clips, the short 30-second reels.
Absolutely. So what is it? What is like, what are the, I love like doing top two. So top two things from your backstory that really shaped like who you are today.
Mm. So probably that playing rugby from a very young age, the values and just the values and the lessons that you get from that. And I guess like anybody, really, our parents. My mum drilled into me and drove into me that if you do something, you're going to do it very, very well. Otherwise, there's literally no point in doing it. And so I didn't just play rugby; I played it professionally, and I played internationally for the Spanish national team. So there was no other way to go about it. And my dad, I think most of my EQ from my dad, like probably the most emotionally intelligent person that I know. Very good management skills, and so I get a lot of that from him.
Really cool.
Yeah,
Okay. What's the highest highlight of your career so far?
it's funny. In terms of sales, I look back on the struggles very fondly. I look back on when COVID wiped me out, and I went, terribly broken in debt. I look back on those times fondly. But in terms of the sales career, I'd say I do look very fondly back on the times of growing that team to just under 1 million a month.
Mhm.
Not so much then the outcome and the achievements, because obviously those are fleeting, and we all know that from the 10K, the 20K, the 30K comms. But just the vibe, the culture, the sort of team that we were able to build there. It was cool. I look back very, very fondly on that. And I'm really enjoying that process now with Nomadic Close as well. Obviously, it's, across multiple teams, which gives me, different opportunities to feel that sort of sense of fulfillment. But that being just one core focus. And it felt like a very special time of everybody really kind of digging in together and building something really, really cool that a lot of people really enjoyed being a part of. All I wanted was to make a team that really wanted to come to a daily meeting. And I believe we had that.
So you're currently, what is it? You're running multiple teams now?
Correct, yeah. So
Okay.
with Nomadic Closer, we run a done for you sales agency, full turnkey. So we come in, we build out the sales process, build out the team, we hire, fire, ramp, do take care of all of the management, and make it a completely done for you, hands off sales process. So my role now is sort of transcending sales management, even more into this. People call it CRO, growth consultant. I don't know. I've never been a big fan of names and like you're the boss, the manager. This, like, I know we have to do it to kind of, but anyway, it's more sitting in between sales and marketing now,
Mhm.
and really being that connecting point that makes everything very fluid in the customer journey, so that when somebody does come onto the call, we're in prime position to be able to close them. And so my goal now with each team is to bring on the first closer to the team would be someone that I see as having management potential to be able to then grow the team themselves. And I just give them what I learned about growing a team and make sure that they're taken care of from this side of the business. So that's what we're doing with Nomadic Closer right now.
Amazing. Okay. So apart from that, is there an offer in the works to help people become a sales manager or a good sales manager? Because we need that. The market needs that.
Yes, potentially. So I'm in the process of currently doing market research to find out about the goals and aspirations of people that do want to get into sales management and the things holding them back and the struggles and the problems that they need to overcome to get there, and really see if I can reverse engineer a way to consistently help people solve that problem. And I feel very confident in being able to help sales managers who are in sales management positions currently. And so that will be something that I'll certainly be offering in the future as well. There are certain skills I think I want to make sure that we have in place before I kind of go and teach those. And I've done it now for one team. I want to make sure that I can do it for multiple teams before I can say like I feel like I know how to do this. Um, that may be a limiting belief, I don't know, but I do like to feel like I'm competent in something. I can fully stand behind a bunch of results and say like, yeah, I've done this many times and in these different realms. But I think that from what I'm seeing in the market is that is a small pool to pull from, is people that were already in leadership or management positions. It's a smaller pool and they're lower paying. They're not really, it doesn't seem to be, please reach out to me if you are, but they don't seem to be desperately crying out for help. But there seem to be a larger pool of closers that want to get into a leadership or management position that are do have this burning desire. And so that's a group of people I would like to focus my attention on and see if I can help make that transition and build something that does that consistently. That's my big thing.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So to wrap up, as the guest of honor, can you please propose a challenge for the audience?
Challenge for the audience, a challenge for this week. Rest without seeking to label or describe this week. Rest without seeking to label or describe. This is a mantra that took a while to click for me, but did genuinely change my life. And it means observe everything that you think, feel, say to yourself or out loud, and rest in that without seeking to label or describe it as good or bad, or describe it as this is I shouldn't be feeling this way, or describe this as this is going really well or I'm doing really well. None of it. Just rest without seeking to label or describe everything, absolutely everything that you think, feel, or say. Because if you do that for a week, you'll notice very quickly that the world is not as it is as you are. And that you are labeling, describing events and things that you are thinking and feeling, and you're believing that they're true and they're not. They're completely made up. They're absolute fabrications of your mind. And you get to choose which ones you hold on to and which ones you let go. But you have to be able to observe them and rest without getting wound up or chasing these thoughts or emotions and thinking that they're now true. If you're feeling sales pressure, if you're frustrated after a call, if you think that you just did amazingly on a call, rest with it. You didn't do well, you didn't do bad, you don't suck, you're not struggling, you're not crushing it. Just rest without seeking to label or describe, and you'll suddenly see you get to pick and choose your own reality. And I know that's deep, but that's my challenge. That is my challenge.
It is. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Adam, for coming on here. So many golden nuggets. I'm so excited to share this because I know a lot of closers who want to make that transition, and myself included, who are lost in the sauce. So I know this is going to be super impactful. Thank you so much, Adam.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on, and thank you for sharing your audience with me, because I know that we've had a conversation about this. I know there's a lot of people that are looking to kind of go down that path, and I'm working on it. I just want to make sure that we do it right, and if I make a promise, that I'm able to uphold it. And so thank you very much for sharing your audience with me today, Princess. Really appreciate that.
Of course.